Thank you for joining me today on Soul Tribe channel, where we talk about the healing process taking place on the planet. Today I have Reverend Layng with me, and he wrote a book called The Witch Who Came Before Me. So I just want to ask you, what started you on your journey to writing this book?
Like I told you before, or whatever, originally this started off as a project assignment, whatever, for my priesthood studies with the Carillion Nativist tradition for my second degree priesthood, and was originally supposed to be a project on something else. I then had developed a roadblock with that path. So I started doing some research one night over my own genealogy and stuff, and kind of got curious, thinking that I can't possibly be the only witch in the entire family. So basically did like a little Google search with my last name, put in the word witch and everything, and found my main spirit guide, and one of my ancestors, Beatrix Layng, who suffered under Pittenweem Witch Trials. And it kind of took off from there.
So did you know that one of your main guides was your actual ancestor?
I knew both my main guides, whatever, human spirit guides, whatever, were two of my ancestors. One is my German great grandfather, Royal, and then Beatrix actually finally gave me her name and everything as the book was coming out, and as I was starting to write and do all the research and everything. When I actually had discovered her and the whole thing, she finally came straight forward and said, "Hi, that's me. This is my story, and this is what I want you to do." Mm-hmm. So you really... I basically went through everything she was telling me and kind of did my own research at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That's one thing I really find amazing, and that's one thing how people get into spiritualism is because when they really start to channel these other energies, they're led down this whole different path of really finding, so many gifts that have always been there,
Yes.
So it opened you up to a whole new aspect, and it was also a healing journey for your ancestors.
Very much so.
So
her big thing was to correct her last name. Because within the trials and everything else, they always amalgamated last names, which is how you end up with so many different variations of the same family line. So he was like, "This is not how we spell the last name. This is how it's spelled. Make sure that's one of the things that's covered in the book."
Mm-hmm. So now, when you said they amalgamated the last name, is it through the different religions or belief systems?
During the Scottish persecutions, there was dialectal differences, whatever, in the languages from the different regions. There was also a very heavy English prominence in the systems and everything. So what they'd end up doing is one person who was documenting the trial, whatever, would write down a last name like mine or Layng. So they put down the correct spelling because they were from the region and knew how the name was spelled. But then somebody else who was also part of the process, who was from either English or from outside the region, whatever, would put Layng or Layng or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
And you mentioned that you're part of the nativist tradition?
The Carillion Nativist.
The Carillion Nativist tradition, and that's a mixture of Native American teachings with European witchcraft?
Yes, it is the best way to explain it is the original matriarch, the original founder of the tradition, Ophelia. She was part Cherokee, but she was also she had also married into, I believe, if I remember correctly, her husband was a Strega, and she was also part Scottish, so she also had learned from her family members, whatever. So there was an amalgamation of the Cherokee medicine tradition, Italian strega, Scottish traditional witchcraft, and spiritualism.
Okay. And so would you say with the combination of these teachings, it's very similar to pretty much all indigenous teachings from around the world, where they really incorporate the interconnectedness and the law of attraction, which is healing within as within, so
Yes.
it helps in the healing process taking place on the planet.
Yes.
So really moving from manipulation, which is mind-only control, power and control, into heart-based creation, which is more in alignment with universal flow. Would you say
Yes.
that's the main teachings of all this?
The currently name of this tradition, however, it's a very philosophical tradition. So while the root aspects of it, the best way I can think to explain it is, while the root aspects and the religious practices are Wiccan, the actual core teachings are very much metaphysical.
Metaphysical.
So they're very, very philosophical. So while they incorporate everything that's in there, you're meant to determine for yourself what it means.
Yeah, and really that's where one thing about spirituality and these indigenous teachings, you look at everyone as an individual.
Yes.
Right? And their journey is individual to them, because in the grand scheme of things, we're all interconnected. We are all one, but we're only a piece of the whole. So everybody's going to have a different purpose and place and experience, and everyone's journey is really unique to them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. Did you actually recognize when you started all of this, because it didn't start out as a book for you, it just started out as a project for what you were doing, right?
Yes.
Did you recognize how powerful this story would be in sharing a monumental time in the evolution of colonization and the healing and awareness involved in sharing these spiritual people's stories?
I had absolutely no idea at all whatsoever what the impact was going to be. I saw it more as telling Beatrix's story and learning more about my own family lines, my own family history, how it is that I'm, to the best of my knowledge, the only witch in my entire family in 300 years or so. But even when I was presenting my dissertation and going through, and my mentor telling me that, I need to publish this and I need to teach courses on this and everything or whatever, I had absolutely no idea what it was going to do. All I knew is I was trying to get my ancestry lines down or whatever, and to share the stories and to tell the history of the Scottish persecutions and what they went through.
Yeah, so it covers a lot of history throughout that time as well. You did a lot of research on it.
Yeah.
How long did that
hours.
take? How long did it take for you to put this all together, to research it and put it all together?
It took 11 months.
Okay.
About anywhere, depending on the day of the week, whatever, anywhere from 8 hours to 16 hours a day.
That's a lot of dedication.
So, it was a lot of internet research. It was a lot of contacting, like the Scottish Historical Society. It was actually, when I had done one of the searches, I came across a book called Pittenweem Witches, written by Leonard Lowe.
What's it called?
The Weem Witches?
The Weem Witches.
Yes.
Okay.
And out of sheer curiosity, I looked him up on Facebook. And he happened to be on Facebook when we got to talking and stuff like that. He actually lives in Pittenweem.
Which is where your ancestor Beatrix is from, right?
Yes, and told me her house is still standing. He gave me a whole bunch of history for her. Actually had sent me a picture of a witch bottle that was found in the walls of her house, and right beside it was the actual witch pricker that was used on her by Culpepper, who was the minister who was torturing her and trying to get her confess.
What exactly was used on her?
A witch pricker.
A witch pricker.
Yes. A witch pricker is a long... They come in different ways. Hers was... The one that he used, whatever, was very, very simplistic. It was wrought iron. There was a little loop on the end with a slight twist, and then it was just a long pointed needle. And
what would happen? They would hit the priest. Is this a priest that would do this?
It would be a minister. Or the priest really didn't do anything. Very, very few Catholic priests had actually participated in the Scottish persecutions. It was mostly the Protestant branches.
The Protestant?
There were a few Catholics, but very, very limited in comparison. They basically lived peacefully with everybody.
Mm.
It was mostly the Protestants who were coming in who instigated the persecutions, and it was mostly to get rid of Catholics. It was a war between the Catholics and the Protestants that started basically became the whole root system of the Scottish witch persecution. The Catholics really had no problem with most of the people who maintained the old customs and traditions and everything else like that. Whereas the Protestant Church came in with that very, very staunch Lutheran and Methodist and Presbyterian tradition that very, very strict. Okay, if you're not with us, you're against us, and right. If you still maintain the old traditions or whatever, the old customs, the old ways, and rather than being devoutly a member of our church, whatever, then you're labeled a witch, you're labeled a heretic, you're labeled whatever, or if you're a Catholic in the same area, you're under constant scrutiny because you're against that particular church.
It's so interesting to see throughout history such a huge separation and divide, and at least we're coming to a space to start to see how it all is connected to one another.
Yes.
Right?
More and more people of all different faiths, all different traditions, of which I've studied many of them, are finally starting to open their eyes and realize it's all just one great big interconnected web of ways to do things.
Yeah.
That we all basically honor the same divine energy, and we just happen to honor them in different traditions, different paths, and different ways.
Express it in different ways, right? Just as being individuals, we can see things in different ways, right? So it's really about finding the ways where we can work together and collaborate and see our similarities, still maintaining that difference because it's so needed, right? If we're all the same, we're going to do the same thing. It's like we're not meant to.
The differences make us unique.
Exactly.
Our individual experiences and everything else about what allows us to connect with everybody else.
Yeah.
It allows us to share our own journey and our own path with other people who might be able to relate in their own perspective, but might teach another person whatever something that they didn't consider or see.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's starting to, instead of to see all the negative things, starting to see how it fits together. It's like everyone holds a piece of the puzzle, right? So, this book was basically a collaboration between connecting spiritually with your ancestors, and then doing the research, because when we get message, it takes us so far, and then we have to do all the research, right, to get all the facts down. And it was all associated with the Pittenweem Witch Trials in Scotland. Could you share some of the experiences that stood out to you during your research? You did share some of them about, learning where she was from and learning that her house was still there. And
With me, I love Beatrix. I trust her. The way I wanted to write the dissertation was, and write the book, was in the context of, this is her story. This is what I feel. This is what she tells me. Through some clairaudience, others, a lot of it is just clairsentience and claircognizance. But it was going, I need to, despite the fact that she's telling me this or whatever, I want to be able to back it up with facts. I want to be able to prove this. I want to be able to show beyond the shadow of a doubt. Right? Now, when she says, this is how her last name was meant to be spelled, and this is how it's supposed to be, I wanted to try and find proof of that. So I tried to do the genealogy search to find her date of birth. There's no record of her date of death or anything. But that had her last name spelled what she was saying was meant to be.
So she told you, was it through clairaudience that she told you, or was it claircognizance? You just knew, or did you?
Clairsentience.
What is it?
Clairsentience.
Okay. What is?
So it's sort of like clairaudience, but you don't really hear the voice in your ear, but you hear it in your head.
Oh, kind of like clairsentience. Is that like a feeling?
It extends a little bit. It extends a little bit beyond a feeling.
Okay.
It would be like her. It would be like her whispering in my ear, her telling me straight in my ear, but I don't hear her voice.
Yeah. I studied all these, but I forget all the different things. So okay.
Clairsentience in the Scottish tradition, in the Celtic tradition, is called keening.
What's it called?
The keening.
Keening. Okay.
Keening.
Okay.
It's that knowing. Somebody is telling, your guide is telling you, and you know.
Yeah.
You can hear it straightforward or whatever, but you're not hearing the voice. Which is how she did it mostly. So it was obviously because that's how she was coming through, and everything was like, I want to back everything up with fact. So I was telling her story while at the same time telling the story of the Scottish persecution. That way it was covering not just her story, but all the witches of Scotland. Because it was later, I later found that I actually had multiple ancestors who suffered under the Scottish persecution, who suffered under the English persecution. I'm still looking into Ireland and Germany, but that main island, I had quite a few who suffered under various persecutions and nations. So it was a massive study, both in self-discovery as well as academically for history and everything else, and then later on had to shift a few things as new information came out right before I published it.
Okay.
So it was as I was getting ready to publish it, I had once again reconnected with my biological mother, and she filled in a bunch of the history from her side of the family. I sent her a picture of her mother's starting for her mother's maiden name, but I'd always thought that because my mother's maiden name is Brown, so. And the way it was, I hadn't seen her parents since I was a child. All I knew was there was the Irish and the Scottish and some German, but didn't really much know a little bit else about that. So I'd always assumed that the Browns were either the Scottish clan or the Irish clan. So when I connected with her and meant to send her the thing, I said, first, before I can send the correct person, I need to know if Grandpa was part of the Scottish Browns or the Irish Browns, because they're two different targets. Which is when she filled in on actually neither. What do you mean neither? He was like, well, your great-grandfather came over to Canada a week before World War I straight from Germany and changed his name from Braun to Brown. He's like, so Grandpa was German.
Mm.
What?
And when did the Pittenweem Witch Trials take place?
Beatrix's trial was in 1704.
Okay. And
so hers was actually coming up towards the end of the persecution.
Okay. And
So whereas I had others who were earlier on, I don't know their stories yet, but I had other ancestors who suffered earlier on, and then one last one who was what's what I'm looking for, exiled to Ireland or whatever, towards the end of the persecution.
Mm-hmm. It seems like a lot of these indigenous teachings really suffered around the world for quite some time. You know, it's not until more recently, you know, even where we are, where the reconciliation is starting. You know, it started to take place a couple years ago, but now with everything really coming out,
Yes,
hitting the awareness, you know, I don't think people, just the average person, was so aware of what was really happening. You know, they might have been aware that things were taking place, but they always were, you know, whether it be media or just social standing, people believed that this was probably the best thing to do.
yes.
You know,
Unless you happen, I know growing up myself or whatever, unless you happen to have friends who were a member of any one of the Native traditions, the Native tribal groups or whatever, also that you didn't hear anything about it. It was like the height of the evangelical movement in Canada was basically, okay, if this is here, then no, we're not discussing anything.
mm-hmm.
And I post this up on TikTok about the 215, about the 800 in Ireland, and all that stuff. And on Native TikTok or whatever, they happen to have one of the big things that came out before the 215 children were found was, you know, if a Native claims you, consider yourself blessed.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, if they call you brother or sister or cousin or auntie or uncle or whatever, like that's it, you're family,
Mm-hmm.
you're in. And every time I saw that, I'm like, I had gone over my life going, I collected them like Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
My best friend growing up, or one of my best friends growing up when I was a child was Native Pittenweem. My best friend now happens to be Cree.
Mm-hmm.
My other good friend of many years or whatever is part Mohawk.
Mm-hmm.
Another friend of mine or whatever was like Sue Blackfoot, and her mother adopted me in, and the one I heard my stepfather happens to be Ojibwe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, I collect them. I grew up around it,
Mm-hmm.
so it was kind of by the time I found the Curly Native tradition and found out some of the history and how the whole system formed and everything else, with starting off the Native medicine tradition, and then the Strega, which was my original training early on in the craft, leading into the Scottish tradition, which is what I trained in afterwards, and everything else like that. I'm like, just completing my doctorate in metaphysics and other studies. I'm like going, yeah, I spent my entire life training for this tradition, so.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of grew up around it your whole life?
I grew up hearing different stories and different traditions and what went on during the 60s school and the residential school. I've heard all kinds of different stories, plus a lot of folklore and legends and traditional foods and stuff like that whenever I would go over people's houses and had participated in multiple powwows and sweats and been invited to various things over the course of many years. So
it's so interesting because, you know, with the mass awakenings happening on the planet, people that didn't even grow up knowing about this stuff are starting to channel the truth, you know, or, you know, maybe they didn't know about it in this lifetime, but they're being woken up to see their past lives and how they played a part in the healing. You know, it's all these healers that have suffered many, many, many different lifetimes that are being woken up at this time on the planet to help raise the awareness, you know. So
Yes.
it's quite amazing. So even if you didn't grow up with it, you would even get the awareness, right?
Yes.
If you're meant to do the healing work. So it's quite amazing. And one thing that your ancestor that you brought up, you know, she was really wanting you to bring forth the true spelling of her name. Now, would that be because that was her identity, you know, as a Scottish woman?
I say so. The Langs were, they were a unique group, because we had everything from peasants up to secretary treasurers for royalty.
Mm-hmm.
We had our own tassel, we had our own curtains, we had our own everything, but because of the Jacobite rebellion, a lot of it was suppressed. And
Sorry, what rebellion?
the Jacobean rebellion,
Okay.
which kind of happened shortly after the Scottish persecutions.
Okay.
The spelling of the last name was very, very common.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a Lang, you might have had any one of a number of spellings or whatever, but you always connected directly with your spelling.
Mm.
Even though you considered everybody else part of the same family and clan, that connected you to that specific area, that specific region.
Mm-hmm. So it was like your personal identity.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think because it was trying to be stripped away from her, that
Possibly.
she was trying to hold on so tightly?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what were some of the most rewarding things that you uncovered during your research?
Finding out that I wasn't alone.
Mm-hmm.
Finding out that there were other members of my family who were witches, and I wasn't just coming in out of nowhere, and learning that there is that tradition, there is that line that passes down, even if it skips a few generations. Was probably the biggest reward of all of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you said you grew up around it, but it wasn't your family that really brought it to you. It was more like the native people that you had met.
Discovery.
Pardon?
Self-discovery.
Self-discovery. Okay, so at a younger age, you started to get curious about it. Mm-hmm.
I was always very, very spiritually willing, even as a child. Sensing things, knowing things, and everything else, but I had no one teach me or do anything. Well, my father knew I was very, very supportive. He was kind of my safe haven whenever I was around him and stuff. But I started off in studying the native medicine traditions and everything else because it was like I said, it was the 80s. It was the height of the evangelical movement in Canada or whatever else. So I'd never even heard of Wicca. Or the closest thing I'd ever heard to witchcraft or whatever was folklore, fairy tales, and movies.
Was fairy tales?
Folklore, fairy tales, and movies. Until I was 16 and met my first Wiccan. She started teaching me little bits, which then got me more curious about wanting to understand more traditional paths, more traditional witchcraft and stuff. And it was another 2 years after that I met my first mentor, my first teacher, whatever else I got, who trained me very, very traditional European witchcraft. And I spent years studying that and intermixing it with what I already learned, what I already knew from the shamanic journeys, and everything else like that, and then gradually came into Wicca after learning everything I could from my old mentor, and then eventually came across the Brilliance in 2006, and after a while, their haters went, yeah, okay, so I spent so many years studying the medicine tradition, I spent so many years studying the Italian traditional, I spent so many years understanding and learning and researching on Scottish craft, everything else, and I'm like, hey, I'm home.
Yeah, because it just brought everything in together into one, right?
Yep.
That's pretty amazing, right? Because sometimes we don't really know the journey, where we're heading on our journey, but it all seems to come together at some point, right? And I find, like, as we follow our spiritual guidance, it creates a healing within, you know? And how did writing this book bring in more growth and understanding for you? Like, you didn't feel alone anymore because you started to recognize there were other people, ancestors in the family that understood the same thing.
Yes. For me, it was probably years before I even started writing the book because I knew she was there. Mm-hmm. And she was being the typical stubborn Scottish woman and refusing to give me her name or anything else, just kept going, it's not time yet, not time yet, not time yet. Even when I know some mediums and everything else like that, and I'm like, what is her name? Mm-hmm. I need to be able to address her properly so I can work with her properly. Like, what is her name? And they'd stop and they'd be like, she says it's not time yet. Mm. Okay. And then when I started writing the book and she finally came through, it was like, thank you.
Yeah. I know the journey really teaches us patience, doesn't it? And
yes.
to trust the divine timing of everything as well.
Yes.
Right? Like, things can't come before the right time because there's a whole bunch of other things that have to fall into place.
Yes.
Right? And a lot of times, if we know something too soon, it's like when it comes, it shifts it, and then it's like sometimes we'll get little intuitive nudges that bring in confirmation.
Yes.
You know, so it's like a whole process.
Actually, I found that while I was working on my first doctorate, I was questioning, it's like, am I even on the right path? Like, am I even doing the right thing here? Like, what's going on? And then I clicked on one of the video lectures, and it happened to be the head of the Brilliant tradition that was doing one of his old talks or whatever, and I'm going, oh, that's hysterical. So I had to email him and be like, this had just popped up in my studies. They borrowed one, they've used a section of one of your old talks or whatever else like that to cover this particular topic on spirit communication. Mm-hmm. He thought it was great. And then I messaged the head of the university or whatever else, and I'm like, so! And he sat there and he thought it was funny. I'm like, messaged the both of them, I'm like, synchronicity.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I did not need any more confirmation than that.
That you're right on the right path, and yeah, right? It really teaches you to trust the journey.
Oh, always.
Right? And going forward from here, what do you see in the works for yourself? I know you were talking about, you know, teaching courses on all of this. Is that something?
I've actually got one course right now that I've got written up that I'm going to be teaching with the Brilliant tradition. Mm-hmm. It's actually a path on more of a study on increasing happiness in one's own life.
The increasing happiness on one's own life?
Yeah. How to achieve it, how to live it, and everything else like that, but from a witch's perspective. Mm-hmm. So, kind of a self-help guide for witches.
Yep.
Is one of them, and I actually have a couple other classes or whatever that are in the works that are going to be taught to tradition as well,
Mm-hmm.
as well as within my own group, in my own temple. But right now, I'm just finishing off my second doctorate degree, and going to be doing some work in life coaching, fitness, nutrition.
Oh, that's great.
Health coaching, and trying to incorporate some Reiki and stuff like that into it as well.
That's amazing, and I mean, we know how important raising the vibration at this time on the planet is.
Yes.
You know, I mean, even from the things I've seen, because I've been writing a book for 5 years now, and I'm just kind of going over it all. And, you know, it's just, I keep seeing something about 2026 and some seriously mass awakenings because of what's to come, and it involves energy not even on this planet.
Yes.
So, and I think we all channel the same stuff, you know, from what I've talked with other people, and you know,
early 2026 is when it's supposed to start, from what I've been told.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's supposed to continue on for like 3 years or something like that. So certain people have been tapped.
Certain people.
Apparently, until a certain people have been tapped.
Okay.
Basically, when they stop being stubborn and accept what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Kind of just learn to go with the flow.
Yes, exactly. And just surrender. Go into that state of surrender to shift the energy. So we'll see what happens. You know, we get bits and pieces. We don't always know everything right away, but it plays out like a little movie, right? So
yes. We only get what we're supposed to be given.
And the one thing that we know for sure, the most important thing to do is to raise your vibration and, you know, manifest from your heart, start living the life of your dreams, you know, trusting the process, opening up to divine guidance. So
definitely.
And that's one thing that all healers help people to do, is to break free of the program of fear and live in truth, right?
Yes.
So we're not feeding those low vibrational energies that are trying to take over, right?
Yes. The little self-fix and everything.
Exactly. So we're out of the control program.
Yes.
Right? What, you know, as we're shifting the energy, you know, from the manipulation into manifesting a better, healthier, happier world, what's your message and Beatrix's message to the world?
Trust. Everybody has a path. Everybody has a journey, and everybody has a story that they can share. Mm-hmm. They just have to learn to trust that there are people that are going to listen, even if they're not directly around them right now.
Say that again, it broke up a little bit.
That they need to learn to trust that they have a story that they can share, and that there are people who are willing to listen, even if they don't happen to be around them right now. Mm-hmm. That everybody's story is just as important as anybody else's, and as long as they're willing to share it, they just never know who they're going to be able to help, or what they're going to learn about themselves for that matter.
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant, because, you know, anybody that starts to open up and do their healing work, they have to walk through the flames and the fire, and usually it's a very lonely journey until
you come out the other side.
Until you come out the other side, right? You got to go through all the pain and the fear, and, you know, there's bits and pieces to help you along the way, but it's not easy. And trust can be one of the most challenging things. So
trusting yourself is probably the most challenging thing.
Because you're breaking through all those cycles of fear and the manipulation.
All the self-healing from your life.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, how can people purchase your book?
It's actually self-published. It's on Amazon.ca, Amazon.com. Basically, if you can get Amazon, you can purchase it on Amazon within your regions and within particular currency that your country or area uses. I've opened it up to basically everybody, so that way everybody can read it and see it and get the story.
That's amazing. And that's The Witch Who Came Before Me. And I'll add a link in the video so people can just click right on it.
I do have to apologize within it. Originally, I tried to do it with colored pictures and everything the way I originally put it out. But I would have had to charge way too much for it, so I switched everything to black and white.
Yep.
Which did absolutely nothing for my family target.
As long as the story's there and the message is there, that's really the most important thing, right?
Definitely.
So, is there anything else that you wanted to add, or?
No, just thank you for having me and letting me share Beatrix's story. And
yeah, it's so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem.
And I look forward to, sharing the link with everybody so they can take a peek at your book.
Thank you.
Learn some history and
there's more books coming, so literally.
Amazing. Everybody needs to understand about the true meaning of healing. So thank you so much, Reverend Layng.
Very welcome.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Have a wonderful night.
You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.